What happens when a locker room feud escalates into guns being pulled inside an NBA arena? This is not a movie plot. This actually happened, and it shook the league to its core. Two teammates on the Washington Wizards, Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton, went from joking around in practice to one of the most shocking scandals in NBA history. In a matter of days, the story went from whispers inside a locker room to front-page news across the country. But this is not just a tale of weapons and suspensions. It is a story about ego, pressure, and the heavy price of fame. Gilbert Arenas was a superstar, a fan favorite with one of the most electric personalities in the game. Javaris Crittenton, on the other hand, was a young player trying to make his mark. What started as a card game dispute spiraled into an incident that would forever stain both of their careers. And it forces us to ask, how can something as simple as locker room banter explode into one of the darkest moments in NBA history? Stick with me, because what we are about to uncover goes far beyond basketball. Before we dive deeper into the scandal, we need to understand who Gilbert Arenas was, because context is everything. Arenas was never supposed to be a superstar. Coming out of college, he was a second-round draft pick in 2001, chosen by the Golden State Warriors at number 31. For most players, being drafted that late usually means a short career, maybe a role off the bench, rarely a shot at stardom. But Arenas was different. He had a chip on his shoulder, a relentless confidence, and a scoring ability that could light up any defense. By the time he arrived in Washington with the Wizards, he transformed into one of the most dangerous offensive weapons in the league. Fans called him Agent Zero, not just because of the number on his jersey, but because of his fearless mentality. He was unpredictable, flashy, and loved the big stage. Arenas would hit game winners, talk trash with a smile, and make you believe he could do anything once he stepped on the court. For Washington, he became the face of the franchise. For the NBA, he was one of the most popular players of the mid-2000s, selling jerseys, filling arenas, and creating viral highlights before viral was even a thing. That is what makes this story so shocking. How could someone who was idolized, someone with so much talent and charisma, end up at the center of such a destructive scandal? And it makes you wonder, do you think a player's personality and reputation can make fans forgive almost anything? To understand how things spiraled out of control, we need to introduce the other key figure in this story, Javaris Crittenton. Unlike Arenas, Crittenton wasn't a star. He was a young guard, drafted in the first round by the Lakers in 2007, but never managed to find stable ground in the league. By the time he joined the Wizards, he was fighting for minutes, fighting for respect, and fighting to prove he belonged. And sometimes, that hunger mixed with pride can create tension. The spark came from something that might sound trivial on the surface: a card game. Gambling on team flights was common in the NBA, part of the locker room culture, a way to pass the time. But when big egos and big money collide, small disputes can turn serious very quickly. Reports say Arenas and Crittenton clashed over a debt from one of these card games. For Arenas, joking and trash talking were part of his personality. For Crittenton, who was still trying to establish himself, this was about respect. The argument didn't just fade away after the game ended. It simmered, it lingered, and eventually it became personal. And this is where the psychology of the locker room comes into play. Imagine being in that environment. Millions of dollars on the line, pride driving every interaction, and a culture that sometimes values toughness over humility. In that atmosphere, conflicts don't just stay conflicts, they can explode. And that's exactly what happened here. So let me ask you, do you think this was simply about money, or was it really about something deeper, like pride, identity, and the pressure to maintain an image in front of your teammates? December 2009. The tension between Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton finally reached its breaking point. What happened next would become one of the most infamous moments in NBA history. According to reports, Arenas walked into the Wizards' locker room and placed several unloaded guns in front of Crittenton's locker with a note that read something like, "Pick one." To arenas, this was supposed to be a joke, a way of mocking the dispute over their gambling debt. But to anyone else, this was no laughing matter. The NBA locker room is supposed to be a place of preparation, of trust between teammates, not a stage for weapons. Crittenton, instead of backing down or laughing it off, reportedly responded by showing his own gun, making it clear that this was not just playful banter anymore. In that moment, what had started as a card game argument escalated into a standoff with firearms inside a professional sports facility. Think about that for a second. Not in the streets, not in a private home, but in the heart of an NBA arena. The incident shocked the entire organization and quickly spread across the league. Now, here's the question for you. Was Arenas simply being immature, pulling a prank that went way too far? Or was this a sign of something much darker, revealing just how fragile the line is between ego-driven disputes and real danger? The story could not stay hidden for long. Once the details leaked to the media, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Headlines across the country screamed about guns in an NBA locker room, and suddenly Gilbert Arenas was no longer the charismatic Agent Zero that fans adored. He was now the face of one of the biggest scandals in league history. Commissioner David Stern wasted no time. Citing the need to protect the image and integrity of the league, he suspended both Arenas and Crittenton for the remainder of the 2009-10 season. For Arenas, it was devastating. Up until then, he had been one of the brightest stars in the game. But after that suspension, his career never recovered. He returned to the court, but the same spark wasn't there. Teams were hesitant, the trust was gone, and he slowly faded out of the league. For Crittenton, the consequences were even harsher. He never regained footing in the NBA and soon disappeared from the spotlight, only to face even darker legal troubles in the years that followed. The incident didn't just alter two careers, it became a turning point for how the NBA dealt with player behavior. The message was clear. Guns and the NBA would never mix, and any violation of that boundary would be met with the harshest penalties. But it also left fans wondering, how could two athletes with such different paths end up destroying their careers in a single moment of madness? This scandal was more than just a bizarre incident. It revealed something deeper about the culture of the NBA in the 2000s. At that time, the league was still struggling to shake off stereotypes about thug culture, and here was a headline confirming every negative narrative critics wanted to push. Inside locker rooms, the culture of machismo was strong. Trash talk, ego battles, and displays of toughness were all part of the environment. But what happens when that culture mixes with real weapons and real anger? The Arenas and Crittenton case forced everyone to confront that question. Psychologically, it also showed how fragile even the biggest stars can be under pressure. Arenas was supposed to be the franchise leader, yet even he allowed ego and immaturity to push him toward a reckless decision. For Crittenton, it was about pride and respect, but his response escalated the situation to a dangerous level. And then there is the bigger social context. This wasn't just about the NBA. It connected to America's ongoing struggle with guns in public spaces, in schools, in communities. Seeing firearms appear inside an NBA locker room made the issue impossible to ignore. It blurred the line between sports entertainment and the harsh realities of society. And it leaves us with a question that still matters today. Do you think this incident truly changed the way the NBA handles locker room conflicts and player behavior? Or was it just treated as a one-time scandal to be swept under the rug? In the years since that day, both men's lives took very different turns. Gilbert Arenas never returned to his superstar form on the court, but he reinvented himself as a media personality. Through podcasts, interviews, and social media, he has stayed relevant, often leaning into the controversy of his past as part of his larger-than-life persona. Some fans still remember him as Agent Zero, the fearless scorer, while others see him as the cautionary tale of wasted potential. Javaris Crittenton's path was far darker. After leaving the NBA, he became entangled in crime, and in 2015, he was sentenced to 23 years in prison for his role in a fatal shooting. His story turned into one of tragedy. A young player who not only lost his career, but his freedom. The legacy of the locker room gun scandal is complicated. On one hand, it was a shocking moment that damaged reputations and altered careers. On the other, it serves as a reminder of just how fragile an NBA career can be, how quickly fame and fortune can vanish with a single mistake. And maybe that is the real lesson here. Talent and charisma can make you a star, but choices define your legacy. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you see this as a story of immaturity that spiraled out of control, or as a symbol of deeper problems within the NBA and society at large? If you found this story as shocking as I did, make sure to subscribe, because here at Behind the Backboard, we uncover the untold dramas of the NBA. The real game starts where the spotlight ends.